Smashers of the internet, and welcome to another episode of
Bit Podsmash,
where gaming goes to grab a beer. Penguin wasn't even ready for it.
No, he was not.
He had to reach.
He still got the tink, though.
Got the
That's
tink.
pretty good so far.
We are a weekly gaming podcast. It's focused on smashing the ideas of culture, politics, pop culture, and other cool things that we might love to talk about with video games.
Video games is our highlight, though, in case you were confused.
It is. It said gaming podcast.
Yes, a gaming podcast. You did say that. Cool.
But this is where video games go to get their beer.
Yeah, it's where they go to get
Because,
beer.
like you go out for a beer with your buddies.
Yeah.
And you talk about serious, cool things.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's really funny and off the wall, and you're like, did I just have that conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on how many beers you have, I guess.
Yeah.
And then games, they want to have beers.
Yeah.
So this is where, like
or
Tomb Raider has a
higher
beer
concepts of games. Ideas of gaming and
Right.
abstract concepts like
Those
that.
things.
Those things. If they were personified, they would sit down and have a beer.
They would.
Yes.
And they would have it here.
Yes.
With you guys. And
with
us.
you guys and us. And we are Penguin and Termite. I'm Penguin.
I'm Termite.
Yeah, so if you're just joining us and want to know which animal's which, just follow the voices.
Termite is an animal now.
Animal. Sorry, it reminds me of, when on vacation, you just kind of deal with whatever like TV options like the hotels and stuff have. And so I watched a lot of like random TV channels, and one of the commercials I kept seeing come up was for some pest control person, and they were specifically targeting termites the entire time. I'm like, don't kill Danny! Don't kill my termite!
Don't kill me.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. But yeah, so
I just tapped my feet and I heard it. These microphones are crazy.
awesome.
Yeah, that's why we have
Yeah,
headphones.
for those of you who are just joining us or haven't listened in a while and are wondering maybe, why is the quality so much better? Hopefully better.
Hopefully.
We just upgraded our equipment a few months ago. It's been so timey-wimey with stuff. Yeah. So we're riding high on a new setup, and hopefully it provides a better experience for all of you.
Still massaging the kinks out. We had a little snafu earlier where one of our voices was out of the left channel and one of our voices was out of the right channel.
Yeah,
and
shout out to Nick Taylor who
called
who was gracious enough to be like, instead of being like, I'm not going to listen to this stupid crap anymore, he instead listened to the whole thing and then told us about it and said, hey, yo, this was weird, and I don't know what was weird. And we said, we don't know either. But we figured it out, and
we did.
Hopefully we won't run into that problem in the future.
Never.
Nope, never again.
Never again.
Never again.
Late episodes, never again.
No.
Editing snafus, never again.
I hope not. It's cool, though. It's summer. It's a weird time. And, I mean, we've delivered on our promise of an episode every Monday.
Every Monday.
Is pretty cool.
Yep.
But you know about who isn't delivering on their promises?
Uh-oh.
Movie Pass.
Movie freaking pass.
Yeah. So when was it? It was very early in our podcast. It was within the first 10 episodes.
Yeah.
You talked about
We
Movie
were all
Pass,
about it.
And we were all about it. We thought it was
$10
awesome.
a month. You can see as many movies, one per day,
Yeah,
all
that
month
was
long.
that was their promise. As many movies as you want. You can see duplicates if you wanted.
Yep.
You can. It's $10 a month, and
you could pay the difference on a premium show if you wanted to get the IMAX
3D or something
yeah.
like that. Yeah, exactly. But it's gone downhill, and like with each kind of blow, I've been like, I'll stick with it. It's not so bad. Like first, they got rid of duplicates, and I was like, okay, that's
you can only see a movie one time.
You can only see a movie one time,
Yeah.
and this was after me seeing Infinity War like every day of the week. So like it was right after that, and I was like, okay, that sucks, but like I'll get over it,
I had just seen Deadpool 2, and I was like, I want to see it again when I get home.
Yeah.
And then it happened. I was like, I guess I'm not going to see that when I get home.
That one. Yeah, exactly. And then that was the first blow, and it was like, that's stupid, but whatever. The next blow was they introduced the whole idea of surge pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't mind the whole actually I'll say the next thing was like you have to take pictures of your ticket stub, but I didn't.
That was like a small rollout to a subset of people,
and I was one of them. And I was like, you know what? If it cuts down on fraud, that's not the end of the world. The end of not end of the world. The really big thing that annoyed me is around the same time they introduced surge pricing.
Mm-hmm.
So it worked like Uber, which is like if more people are seeing a particular showtime, they'll charge an additional surcharge.
Yep.
And like I was reading on the Reddit today, and people were saying that it could get upwards of like $8.
Yeah.
Which you might as well pay for the movie ticket at full price.
Right.
At that rate.
At that
You know what I mean?
It's like halfway there.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like, I was like, okay, well, fine. I just won't go see movies when they first come out.
You just wait.
And I'll just wait, whatever. So
Or
I was
see
like,
it on a weekday.
taking each one blow by blow. And then they just kind of the nail for the coffin, the third strike came today. They had this big thing. It was while I was on vacation where they like I actually looked at my movie pass. Actually, this happened to me because my family and I were talking about going to go see Mission Impossible.
Yeah,
and we looked at our movie pass and the app, and it said like, "Oh, movie pass is down right now due to a quote unquote technical problem."
Yeah, technical issue.
Technically, they ran out of money.
Yeah, technically
they apparently
broke.
lost money or ran out of money to pay their credit card like partner card company or
Right.
whatever, and so they weren't able to run credit cards, which is what their entire business is a credit card basically. So yeah, that was ridiculous.
And then to recover from that, they just pretty much said, big movies, we're not going to let you see them.
Yeah, we're not going to let you see them.
You're not going to see Mission Impossible this whole weekend.
And their explanation for it was like, well, you can't get new movies on Netflix either. And it's like, yeah, but Netflix doesn't promise that.
Right.
Like,
it
that's
never
not
has.
part of Netflix's business model. Your whole business model was any movie, anytime, any theater. Like, that was their thing. They've actually taken that off. They used to have that on their website, Movie Pass, any movie, anytime, any theater.
Yeah.
And it's
gone.
removed. And now it just says movie time.
Oh, gosh.
It's so stupid.
Yeah.
So
they've just rolled back.
it's basically
cool thing
and then
after cool thing
and then
after cool thing.
doubling up on the you can't see new movies at
Mm-hmm.
all. They've doubled up on also they're raising their prices by another $5.
I didn't see that anywhere, but I heard.
No, it's happening within the next 30 days. So
Wow.
I don't know if plans that were at the $9.95 are grandfathered in for a year or something. I don't know that, but from what I can tell, their official statement is that they are raising the price to $15 a month.
Wow.
So
There's
ironically, their stock went up after that.
Did they?
Yeah, it's weird because the stock went down after the whole debacle.
Oh, sure.
And then it's gone back up. But, stock prices aren't necessarily indicative of anything. I think that the crash is coming.
Oh, yeah. Well, stock prices are reactionary based on hype.
Yeah.
I can't say reactionary. It's opposite of what I want to say. They're
Yeah.
proactive based on hype.
So
like businesses make decisions and then the stock changes based on what people think the outcome of that decision is going to be.
Exactly.
Not necessarily where they are right now.
Right. That's a good point.
Hence why Nintendo stock dropped after Smash Bros. Was announced, because the investors thought Nintendo has nothing else to offer. They just have Smash Bros. For the rest of the year. But the Switch is like their best-selling console since the Wii. So there's no reason to like...
That's so wrong, too. They've got Mario Party coming out.
Yeah.
That's going to be a huge seller
Right.
because everyone loves Mario Party. And
But
it's
Nintendo stock's dropping. They're losing money.
All right.
How do you do that? Business, man.
Yeah, business is stupid.
Buy stock in Termite and Penguin.
Yeah.
We'll set you right.
Yeah.
We'll treat you butter.
We'll treat you butter. I'm glad you remember that joke.
I do.
Oh, it's one of my favorites.
Anyway, what were you going to say? I think I cut you off.
No, you're fine.
Movie Pass.
Movie Pass. I think. I was just gonna say I canceled. I went ahead and canceled. I
I
haven't.
am not going to cancel. I
haven't-
am riding that ship
I
till
know
it sinks,
you are.
baby.
You're Captain Jack Sparrow.
Captain Jack
That's your-
Sparrow on the mast of that ship as it just crashes and burns, baby. It's going to be glorious.
I respect your decision. I personally am just like, that was the last straw for me. I don't want to pay more money to see fewer movies, and I just canceled, and I have to the end of the month, so I probably will go see Mission Impossible if I get a chance to.
if they'll ever unlock
If
it.
they'll ever unlock it, yeah. And then my wife said she's gonna go see Mamma Mia or not tonight. She's gonna go see Mamma Mia and then cancel it.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done with that for now. So
I'm going to be over here paying $40 a month and only able to see the indie movies once.
Mhm.
And on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
How else can they limit this thing?
Right,
You can only see an indie movie between noon and 2 on a Tuesday.
Yeah, they'll tell you what showtime you have to go see.
and that's
or
it.
else that's it. Yeah, that's exactly.
That's the email also
That's when
said
you
that.
stop.
They're going to restrict showtimes.
Oh, are they really?
They are,
Oh,
yeah.
So stupid.
Yeah. So that your friends want to go see it at 9, but you can't
because
unless you pay full price because
Yeah.
only the 7 o'clock showing is available
it's so
or something.
ridiculous.
Like, yeah.
So the whole we officially rescind Movie Pass as one of our favorite things.
No, it's not a favorite thing
It's
anymore.
not a favorite thing, but
Termite riding that ship till it ends.
You were riding
is
the
gonna
ship
be
to the
a
end.
favorite thing.
Penguin is going to just not see as many movies. I think
know.
that I've limited myself now to Venom. I'm going to see Venom and pay full price for it.
Ooh.
And there was one other, maybe the new Fantastic Beasts movie.
Yes.
Yeah, I
can't
probably
wait.
will see that too.
Mhm.
So there was one other. I feel like there's another Christmas movie that's coming out this year, but there's no Star Wars at Christmas because Solo came out in the spring. So
Right.
who knows? But what I'm hoping, sorry, real quick, before we get into favorite things, what I'm hoping happens is that movie theaters now see how at least popular that idea of seeing a movie every day,
Mhm.
like, or not every day, but
Well,
seeing
there's two
like,
competitors
multiple
to
movies a month.
MoviePass already.
Yeah, but most of them are like 2 tickets a month or something like that.
Yeah.
They're still. What I'm hoping is that like AMC has their like it's called A-list or something like that,
Mhm.
and it's I don't know what the actual deal is, but it's some monthly fee you pay and get access to movies and stuff like that. And it also works with their own rewards program. I'm hoping that like Paragon, our local theater, or Regal or something comes up and says, "Hey, we'll do something similar."
Hopefully.
to that. So that's what I'm gunning for is
Yes.
movie theaters
What
themselves.
will happen in the future?
Yeah. Because like it was a good experiment.
It was.
It wasn't sustainable
Right.
in its in the model. That
This
it
is
was.
great because
So,
Netflix worked. And now they're trying it again with movie theaters, and it didn't. But it was the exact same approach.
yeah,
We're
the
going
same
to
idea.
suffer a crazy loss and let all these people see whatever they
Yeah.
want, whenever they want. But Blockbuster crumbled.
Yeah.
Hollywood Video crumbled. Movie
Right.
Gallery crumbled.
But
Everyone.
I guess that the difference with Netflix is that they had a new technology, like streaming, relatively new approach that
extremely expensive and
It
unreliable.
was expensive
at the time.
and it was unreliable, but they also were
for them, not for us.
I don't remember the exact details because I guess I was a little bit younger. Still, I used Netflix, but I didn't pay attention to like the business of it. But I imagine that the difference is the lack of transparency. That was the biggest thing for me. It's like MoviePass would make these changes and then tell you afterwards that they were making the changes.
Like, what's going on?
Like,
that's what
wait,
happened.
why is this grayed out? It's because you've already seen this movie. It's like,
Right.
When did that happen? And then they would send out like 2 weeks later, they'd be like, oh yeah, so we're doing this thing now. It's like,
great.
well, yeah, we know, but like, thanks for telling us ahead of time so we can just like trust your people to like.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them ahead of time and then say we're making this change at the end of August, like, and then trust us to like make the consumer to make the right decision for themselves, as opposed to then being like, well, screw this crap. I don't know. It was just so I just feel like the whole company MoviePass has been treating me disrespectfully.
Mm-hmm.
I've never felt that way with Netflix.
Right.
Never. Like Netflix will even say like, hey, yo, we're gonna raise our prices by $1 this year
at this date,
and sometimes they'll be like, you people who are grandfathered in for another year at this rate,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like they'll do stuff like that, and that's like super chill.
Right.
I like Netflix.
Netflix started with DVDs. Did you ever do that?
I did do the DVDs.
Yeah,
I
I did
loved
too.
it. I got the Pokemon season 1
Yes.
on TV. Like I
Indigo
just get
League.
them delivered to my door. It was
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. So that was
You
fun.
had
Me and
that
my roommate
intro
at
on
the time.
repeat?
Yeah.
The poker rap on repeat?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Me and my roommate. That's what we did. We would get Pokemon. We watched Pokemon.
That's
It was awesome.
awesome.
So, but yeah, I actually like the DVDs. I might consider doing DVDs again.
Mhm.
It's fun.
It is
So,
fun.
cool. All right. Well, let's actually now. Doing this podcast is our favorite thing. Doing this podcast is our favorite thing. As Termite was anxious to sing earlier, that was our intro into our first segment of the podcast, which is favorite things. It's an opportunity for us to catch you up on the things, usually non-video game related things that we're digging this week, although sometimes we'll, treat ourselves and talk about a video game if it's really good.
Mhm.
So, do you have a favorite thing this week?
Not right off the top of my head at the moment.
That's fine. I do.
Get it.
So this is kind
Lay it
of
on
an
me.
expanded version of my favorite thing from like several episodes ago, which is, I think a long time ago, I don't know, the first time it came up on the podcast was when your wife talked about her favorite thing was this book series called The Stormlight Archive.
Uh-huh.
And I then piggybacked later once I had gotten further into the book series and was like, it's so good.
Yeah.
I'm going to say my favorite, I just finished another one of his books that takes place in the same expanded universe.
Mhm.
He calls it the Cosmere.
Yeah.
And it's his kind of expanded universe, so it has these sort of subtle connections
Mhm.
between all these worlds, but imagine them as being like different planets in the same universe.
Okay.
So it'd be like the same kind of like subtle connections as like Guardians of the Galaxy has with like
Marvel.
Iron Man. Yeah, or the rest of them,
Yeah.
like the Avengers. Now, at some point, maybe they'll come together. I don't know. But at the very least, you get a sense that these things definitely take place. In fact, 2 characters from Stormlight Archive are in this book that I just finished.
Ooh.
It's called Warbreaker. It was really good, the book itself. It kind of like built the same way as the first book in Stormlight Archive, where it's kind of slow and kind of like he's doing a lot of world building and like coming up with the rules. And like the last fifth of the book is like, oh my gosh, like crazy.
Yeah.
Like everything's kind of falling in place. So I'll just say that my favorite thing is Brandon Sanderson, the author. Like,
All right.
I love his writing. He's awesome. You guys should check out any of his books. I would highly recommend Stormlight Archive, but I would recommend Warbreaker as well. And I'm just starting one of his first trilogies. It's called Mistborn.
Yeah, I heard good things about Mistborn.
Yeah, and I'm enjoying it so far. And
Yeah.
I really like his writing style. It's inspiring to me as an aspiring writer. Now I haven't actually acted upon my inspiration, but I'm still like, yeah, I want to write like you do. So yeah, that's my favorite thing for the week.
Fun fact, and maybe it's not really a fact, but Navy sailors love Brandon Sanderson. His books are all over their ships.
Really?
In every room and every part,
That's
like
awesome.
everywhere. I'm like, oh, hey, look, it's Mistborn. Oh, hey, look, Stormlight Archives.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's
I
really
bet you
cool.
that I bet you they like fantasy because a lot of fantasy has sort of that like some kind of military. I mean, that's why people join the military in a lot of ways. Not the only reason, but a lot of young men are
They
like,
join the military because they love
I want to
fantasy.
fight. Yeah, well, because they love the action of fantasy. Yes, I will stand by that statement. They do because they grow up reading fantasy. They grow up reading Lord of the Rings, and they want to be Aragorn, and that's like totally respectable. I wanted to learn how to fight, and I liked Sage Combat because I wanted the same exact thing. I wanted in my head, I wanted the reality of who I was to match the reality of who I was in my head. You know what I mean? And a lot of that's fueled by fantasy, so I can totally see. Plus, a lot of those like long-standing fantasy series, they're really good to go back and reread, but also it's like if you start the Wheel of Time and you're on a ship for a year,
Yeah,
you'll get through it.
Uh-huh.
Like, it'll pass the time. So I bet there's a lot of reasons why fantasy's attractive to soldiers.
I definitely saw all of Game of Thrones on one shelf, like
yeah.
in its entirety.
Nice.
I was like, well, that would take me an entire 3 years to read that.
I need to reread it at some
It's
point.
insane.
It's before Winds of Winter comes out because there's so many details I missed.
I have a favorite thing.
Okay, good.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Marvel.
Again?
Yes. I don't know how many times I'm going to talk about this on the show, but I'm in the middle of season 5 because it hit Netflix pretty recently, and I'm like halfway through it now, and I've noticed a trend because in season 4 they did this with Ghost Rider transitioning into the framework, like the AI.
Yeah.
Well, in season 5, the first half is all like if you guys care about spoilers for a show that's aired like over a year ago and it's been on Netflix now for over a few months,
sure.
I'm sorry,
by
but
our own
yes,
spoiler rules that we talked about.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about some things that might be kind of on the fringes of a spoiler, but
ahead like 2 minutes.
Right? Yeah. They're in space, but in the future, the Earth is destroyed, and like they're in the remnants of what's left of Earth. They're inhabiting the building, the structure that survived the explosion, and there's a community there in the first half, and so it's all about them getting back to the future. No, they're going back to their present time.
Yeah.
So they escape and they do that, and they get back to the future. And what caused that thing to happen in the first place is now taking place, and so you kind of come back. And there was a wedding, and then it was a giant reveal about like who one of the characters is in relation to the people getting married. And I was like, "What? This is insane! This is so good!" And
wow,
yeah, I love.
People are going to think that it's your favorite show.
It might be
because I think we've talked more. You've talked more about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. than we have talked about any other show.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take
we talked about Game of Thrones.
Mad Men might be my favorite show of all time.
Okay,
maybe.
I'm glad that our listeners now know that about you.
Yeah. But Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., man, it just surprises me because it's so like quote lowbrow, right? It's just like
It's not.
It's the show I watch when I'm at the gym, like on the treadmill. So I'm not sitting and focusing on 110%, like into the lore and focusing on all the characters. It's just, it's so good. And it always surprises me about how good it is that maybe I should not be watching this on the treadmill. Like I should
be focusing on it. Yeah. Cool. Well, then do we want to move on to DLC, downloadable content? It's our next segment in every episode that we do, except for one. And it's just a time when we can have sort of a mini discussion, a bit of content, a bit of a small conversation that's generated by the two Dans in the room, Penguin and Termite. Our names are Daniel, in case you didn't know that.
Daniel and Danny.
Daniel. Well, I go by Dan. So Dan and Danny, Penguin and Termite. That's why we go by Penguin and Termite, because it's
you
easier.
guys can distinguish who we be.
All right.
VR who VR. Yes!
VR, the youth of the nation. So, those are our VR jokes. We are talking about VR today, and that is what our DLC is about today, is VR. So, what is your favorite... So, that's what our DLC is today, is what is your favorite depiction of VR in pop culture, and why?
The Matrix.
The Matrix, okay.
Yep, it was the first.
Yep, well...
That's, to me.
Okay, yeah.
It was my first.
Tron was one of the first.
Yeah, but I didn't watch that until way later.
That's fair.
And I was like, this is old.
This is old and stupid.
Yeah, it was like, computers are better than this now. Anyway, The Matrix. Because I like The Matrix.
Computers are better than they were when The Matrix came out,
I know,
too.
But The Matrix is still a little bit timeless.
All right, I got you.
A little bit. I like that it's you in the virtual reality.
Yeah.
It's not an avatar.
Right.
And that's, like, Ready Player One was a close second, because I was like, this is, you go to school in VR in Ready Player One. Where The Matrix, it's like you just upload how to do it, like to yourself.
Yep.
Like I'm gonna fly a helicopter, load it up, doc, or whatever.
Yeah, theoretically, in The Matrix or in the world of The Matrix, if you came into the real world, you could theoretically upload, like you could, or keep the skills that you've learned in The Matrix.
I think so. Yeah.
Like theoretically, like if you've been downloaded how to fly a helicopter, you know how to fly a helicopter now, and theoretically could do it in the real world. So that's kind of cool. Yeah.
You had that big needle into your spine. It kind of just jacked into your brain, both in real life. You didn't know about it in The Matrix, but in real life, that's how it works. So, like, a little violent to get in there, which is kind of stucky as opposed to, like, a headset.
Yeah,
it's a little less intrusive. But, yeah, that's why I like The Matrix, because it's you and, like, the stuff you learn in there is permanent.
Yep, cool. I would say that my favorite depiction of VR in pop culture is Sword Art Online, the anime.
Ooh.
I'm not a huge fan of the actual anime itself, but the concept of that VR world is awesome. Like, I mean... Because it's what I want from that. I mean, it's even more so than Ready Player One, partially because we've talked about this and we will talk about it again this episode. But I like the idea of BMI's brain machine interfaces over than just sort of the simulated VR of Ready Player One, where it's just tricking your senses into thinking you're in a virtual world, but the reality is like you're sitting there in a room, just like swinging a stick around,
trying not to hit your cat.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas in both The Matrix and Sword Art Online, essentially you jack into this world, like your consciousness gets transported into this world, and you're controlling an avatar in that virtual world. And that's, in my mind, that's like the purest sense of what VR is, because the way VR is now is it's reality, but like it's like an illusion of sense. It's like illusion, but in reality, because you're still operating your body in reality. Whereas in Sword Art Online and The Matrix, your consciousness is literally occupying a virtual simulated world. Yeah, and I liked all the rules in Sword Art Online, just the way they set up the world and everything. It's like a game. It's like an MMO. Yeah. So that was really fun. So
Sword Art Online, is that on Netflix now?
I believe season 1 is on Netflix, or at least it was. And if it's not, it might be on another streaming service that you own, like Amazon Prime or something like that.
Have you ever heard of .hack sign?
I have heard of it. I'm not actually familiar with
exactly
what it
the same.
Is it the same?
What you just mentioned?
Yeah.
It's like
an MMO,
but he gets stuck
VR.
in an MMO. He can't log out.
I mean,
it's a complete virtual world.
That's what Sword Art Online is, except everyone's stuck. So like the whole idea is that like they all go into this world, opening day, like the release day of the game, everyone logs in, but then like that at the end of that first day, everyone who's logged in gets stuck there, and the creator of the game comes and is like, if you try to remove your helmet or whatever, or try to log out, like there's a chip and all of your headsets will fry your brain or whatever. So everyone's like held hostage in this game, and all their actual bodies are in like the hospital. Yeah. And they have to they're like, until someone can get to the top level of this tower, like the final raid essentially, then everyone's stuck in the game world. So it's a fun concept. Yeah.
That is interesting.
Because then like everybody's then stuck like they have to like learn how to like live with each other all in this world. So like when you actually have a player killer, like also I think there was something like if you die in the game, you die.
Of course.
In real life.
They have to have that.
So yeah. So
what about eating?
That's what I'm saying, is they had they had
someone in real
IVs
life?
hooked up.
And
so
they were
sustained that way. Yeah. So like
wonder
on
if they
life
still
support,
felt hunger.
Yeah.
In the show, in the game, they
I don't
feel
remember,
hungry.
They addressed that, but I don't remember what the answer was.
My brain's so weird. I just think about these things. I'm like, how do they sleep?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, cool. Yep. So that's DLC for the day. Tell us what your favorite VR or AR presentations in pop culture have been. We would love to hear from you. You can give us feedback and tell us what your thoughts are about VR and pop culture on Twitter at 80Bit Podsmash, Reddit at 80Bit Podsmash, Instagram at 80Bit Podsmash, Facebook
80Bit Podsmash.
80Bit Podsmash. I don't know what the actual format is, but 80, just look for us. It's all one word, hyphens. The 80 is the letters, not letters, the numbers. 80, not spelled phonetically. So yeah.
And go to 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing site where there are links to iTunes and Google Play.
Yeah. You can send us a Gmail.
You can.
80bitpodsmash@gmail.com.
You can do that.
You can do that. We'd love to.
The best thing you could possibly do for us is share us. You like an episode? Hit that share button and tell all your friends.
And you
tweet
can
about us,
share it, and then also say your answer to, and get them intrigued, get them percolating about what we talk about in the podcast by saying, my favorite VR world is Tron, or whatever.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah, whatever you want.
No haters here.
Except the Tron haters. You'll probably get some hate from the Tron haters. But if you were friends on Facebook with
we're
Tron
not
haters,
going to hate anyone.
Exactly.
The audience can hate on each other all they want.
And if you're...
No, you can't. Be nice.
Yeah, be nice to each other. Don't be toxic. And if you're friends with Tron haters on Facebook, you should probably defriend them. There's nothing worse than a Tron hater. So I've talked about Tron a lot.
Yeah, you have.
Let's go into our episode. So we've been promising for a while to do a full episode on VR and AR. So this is what this is. It is I call it the VR/AR super episode.
Super.
It's not going to be super in... Yeah, super show. It's even better. Damn.
Well, I didn't come up with that. I did not come up with that. That's the Super Mario Super Show.
You are the first person to ever come up with Super Show in any piece of content ever.
I was quoting the Mario Brothers live action show / cartoon. Do you remember that?
I think so. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that show.
So it's not going to be super in the sense that it's going to be longer. It's just going to be hopefully all of our thoughts about VR and AR that we have had thus far and have come up with thus far. So, let's start off by defining, as we always do for our listeners who haven't kept up, what is VR and what is AR?
Virtual reality.
Virtual reality.
And augmented reality.
Mm-hmm. Virtual and augmented reality. Virtual reality, by definition, according to Wikipedia, is an interactive, computer-generated experience taking place within a simulated environment that incorporates mainly auditory and visual, but also other types of sensory feedback like haptic.
Haptic means like something you touch.
Something you touch.
Like a vibration suit. Or something that pushes on you or pulses or something.
Yep. And the difference between I think it's also helpful to describe the differences between the two, so that, AR is not synonymous with VR. It's a little bit different. It's an interactive experience of a real world environment whereby the objects that reside in the real world are quote unquote augmented by computer generated perceptual information.
The most crowd pleasing example of that, or like accessible, is Pokemon Go.
Pokemon Go, yeah.
It's like you hold your phone up and you see the street you're walking on, and the Pokemon's running around in the environment.
Yep, exactly, and that's augmented or AR.
And Google Glass.
Google Glass was the other one, yeah.
It's like a little, GUI up on your screen as you walk around telling you where you are.
Yep, and we'll actually talk more about both of those in a second. So, all right, talking about the definition of these things, we also like to kind of dive into what's the history of VR and AR? Where did VR and AR come from? What are their conceptual origins, and what are their physical predecessors to what we've got now? So, a little bit of research we did on this. A lot of it taken right from Wikipedia. There's a lot more details on those sources.
Yeah,
so,
it's extensive.
It's very extensive. So if what we talk about in regards to the history kind of percolates your curiosity, check out that Wikipedia article, or those Wikipedia articles. They've got a lot of information about those. And examples. But we're going to kind of hit the highlights. So the exact origins are disputed because you have to kind of get into the philosophy of what a simulated reality is. So like
doing drugs and sitting around a fire.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
You're in a new world.
You're in a altered state of consciousness, and one might argue you're in a different world. I mean, there's all these theories and philosophical ideas is like, is real life a virtual reality? There's all these theories about like, what if we're just in a very sophisticated computer program? What if we're in the Matrix? Yeah, exactly. So there's all kinds of theories as to, just what virtual reality, like what is a simulated reality, what is reality. Whoa, this has got way real. We're not going to get into
sideline that.
We're talking about mostly computer or maybe even mechanically simulated environments. But I did feel like bringing it up because specifically there was a couple of playwrights in the 1860s, I think 1800s,
really,
that talked about like, they were like, we want you to conceive of the play. They put on plays, just any play, any theatrical performance. They're like, you should consider that a simulated reality. Like in a way, they are simulating reality, and they're like, we want you to conceive of this as a reality into itself. Like this isn't just pretend, this isn't just
experience.
Make believe. Yeah. So that's why I bring it up, because it's interesting, because there are other types of art that one could philosophically debate whether they count as virtual reality. So
interesting.
Or not maybe virtual, but definitely
I was gonna say, like,
simulated.
Virtual really implies computers.
It does, yeah. A simulated reality, a simulated reality experience. Anyways, the first real kind of predecessor to the virtual reality machines we have now came in 1962, so a long far cry from the 1860s, about 100 years. And it was a guy named Morton Heilig.
I don't know how to pronounce that name.
Yeah,
either.
he wrote a book. I forget what it was called. It's on Wikipedia. Anyways, he wrote a book, and then he built this machine to kind of give an example of what he was talking about in the book.
Did you see a picture of this machine?
I did. It's crazy.
Is it one of those like photographer type cover curtains that you sit under like a photo booth?
Yeah, you just like stick your face into it, and then it's just like this big, it's almost like an arcade machine, but it's just huge. It's called the Sensorama, and it was like a mechanical device, and it was meant to...
It had like smells in it.
Yeah, like a smell-o-vision.
Weird sounds and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like meant to kind of give you the idea of transporting you into a simulated environment, but
think about like sitting in a photo booth.
Yeah.
And it looks kind of 3D.
Yeah.
But it's actually just real
There's like
stuff.
sounds coming out in speakers. Yeah. And then like they'll like show you a picture of a flower, and then you'll smell.
Yeah, you'll smell the floral aroma.
Something. Yeah. Who knows what
it's a craft beer tasting.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So that was the Sensorama. So like super rudimentary. From there, we'll get into the actual computer. There was a bunch of stuff in like the 70s and 80s that were computer simulations, but they were mostly meant to be like training things for military training.
A cockpit like flight simulator.
Yeah, flight
thing. That thing was think of like 2 CRT monitors on your head.
Wow.
It was a stupid like juggernaut helmet. It was ridiculous. It was like, I guess if it teaches people how to fly airplanes, you know?
Exactly. So most of that stuff was simulated. Had simulation applications, and for most of the rest of the next 2 decades. In 91, the first VR as it applied to video games was Sega. It was
I
at least
didn't know
announced,
this until
Sega
today.
VR.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And another thing they tried to do to expand the life of the Sega Genesis.
Yeah.
Because the CD wasn't enough.
Now,
the 32X
I don't know if it
wasn't
came
enough.
out.
I don't think it
actually ever came out,
Yeah.
but it was announced, and then like I know that Computer Gaming piggybacked off of it. It was a publication, and they were
Mhm.
like, we're gonna have like fully affordable and functioning VR by 1994.
What?
Like, okay,
Wow.
20 years later, the
Nintendo was a year behind.
yeah, it was just a couple years, a year behind, but like Virtual Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Virtual Boy is the
Boy
next
was
example.
awesome.
95.
I love Virtual Boy.
I never got to do it, but I've heard it was a joke.
I've got one right there.
People
on the shelf.
talk, really?
Yeah, I
We
have
gotta
one.
bust it out. What was it like? Because I was actually curious about
You
this. I
put
didn't
your
know.
face into this thing on a stand, kind of like these microphones that we have right now. And you have just enough guards around your eyes that it blackens your environment out. The speaker was like in the bottom of the thing, so you could use headphones if you wanted the full immersion. But and it was all red and black, and it was basically just 2 images rendered off-put each other, so it was 3D.
Were there games on it?
Oh yeah, and
Okay.
one of the best Wario games ever made is on that. Wario
cool.
Land. Oh, it's a side-scrolling platformer, and it uses the depth to like you could jump to the background and come back to the foreground.
Huh.
Oh, it was so good. My
That's
brother and I
cool.
sunk hours into that.
See, people
And-
always talk about it as if it was a joke, but
yeah, no, it was really good.
that's surprising they didn't keep up with it. Why would you consider it a failure? Like, why would it? Well, based on like,
Okay, it had this no battery life.
Okay.
It claimed to be kind of portable because it's just a face mask,
Mhm.
but the mask needed the stand to sit it on a table.
gotcha.
And so, like, you have to sit. I don't know if you can picture me because you guys are audio listeners, but like, you have to like lean in. And you talk about posture, and we have standing desks now and all this stuff, so none of it would fly. But it was super uncomfortable. You had to crank your neck back and like
Oh,
look into
God.
this screen. It was semi-adjustable, but then like, so it was just uncomfortable. And then, because no one was used to having to completely immerse yourself into a game to play it. You thought you could play your console in the open with your family, and this was just a single-player experience, man. You are in, and
Right.
it's just you, and it makes a bunch of noise, and I just think it wasn't appealing.
Right, during a time when during the era of couch gaming,
Right.
during the era of couch co-op, yeah, I can see how that would be.
Yeah, this is like the prime Super Nintendo Sega Genesis time frame,
Mhm.
and to have this thing that isolates you from
Yep.
everyone in the house to stick your face in, and the graphics weren't the best.
weren't
'cause
great,
it's
and the
only black and
gameplay
red.
was minimal.
Gameplay was so good. That was the one thing
Oh,
I
it
wish.
was?
I
Okay.
wish so bad that they brought some of those games to like the 3DS or some way to like play them.
Yeah.
Because the best Mario Tennis game was Virtual Boy.
Oh,
the
wow.
best Wario game was Virtual Boy.
Was it a separate console, entirely separate console,
Yeah.
or was it okay?
It has its own cartridges and stuff
wow.
and everything. I can show you all that.
That's
after
awesome.
This, if you want.
Yeah, I do want to.
Yeah.
see that. Yeah. So
Just-
you did experience VR before.
Yeah.
Before your foray into Doom.
And the difference is like VR now kind of reacts to your movement.
yeah.
This did not. This was
Yeah.
a completely static thing on a stand that you had to put your face into to see it.
Mhm.
It did not move with you. And if you didn't line your face up right, it didn't look right. So like you just
Yeah.
had to stay still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 15 years later, again, VR kind of after the Virtual Boy, it was VR was considered just
A gimmick.
just not a gimmick, something that's not going to really happen
Mm-hmm.
in the for a while. So the next really big leap forward with VR was the 2010 prototype of the Oculus Rift. And what set it
Yeah.
apart from VR's predecessors was it had rotational tracking, which is what you were talking about, where
Right.
you can look around and the camera essentially pans with you,
Mhm.
giving you that first person
360 degree kind of
perspective.
panoramic.
Yep.
Yep.
and it had a 90-degree field of vision. The original prototype had 90
Really?
degree field
That's
of
it,
vision,
huh?
which was what it was. Yeah, which is surprising, but like it touted like 90 degrees.
Yeah.
So since then, the Oculus Rift now you have a full 180 degree
Okay.
field of vision, or more than that. Whatever, you can look in an entire you can look down and to the right,
Yeah.
and you can look up. You can look the full globes
Yeah.
worth of if you imagine being the inside of the middle of a circle, you can look that full.
It's omnidirectional.
Omnidirectional, yep. And so that's what it is now. But the first prototype was in 2010. Then we got more into the next kind of things we'll talk about. They're actually more AR. So we'll do a little bit of AR VR. In 2013, Google Glass came out. That was
Mhm.
that was augmented reality.
Oh, I wanted one so bad.
I did,
That
but
sounded
it was
so
a
cool.
flop. So
It was.
and I think
Yeah.
part of the reason why it failed was the eye tracking.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more about the applications of VR and AR, but and developments. But one of the great things that AR brings, possibilities AR brings to the table is real life HUDs, heads up displays. Being able to basically have any information you want, just like right there in your field of vision and accessible at any time. The problem was they used eye tracking with the Google Glass, which meant that like you'd accidentally trigger things based on where you looked. Whereas, you know, the way I imagine it, like if you could just like, if it had hand tracking, like if it had a little camera like on the, like even if it was just my full glasses and say it was a heads up display, like just like track my hand movements so I can trigger things whenever I want, as opposed to
we could probably get it the way we want it now.
That's what I'm hoping that they do.
It's ready to come back.
I'm hoping they don't give up on AR as a heads up display, because I think that like it would be super popular, especially wearable tech. Now we've got smartwatches.
Right.
I think the next logical step is smart glasses.
Yep.
Where you can
put them together.
The lenses are essentially the same as a Google Glass, but like you just do different ways of like, and maybe it's, you know, like you can have accessibility options that you want to change.
Yeah.
Based on what you want, but we'll get more.
It's so weird because 2013, it was only 5 years ago, and I don't think of the smartphone as being that different 5 years ago, but they were.
They were, yeah.
Especially Google. Like Android was garbage 5 years ago.
Yep.
I remember all of the trash Android phones I've had.
Yeah.
They didn't have a single like architecture, and everyone was all fragmented. The Motorola was totally different from Samsung. It was totally different from LG and HTC. They all had their own flavors.
Because they were like open. It was meant to be kind of not completely open source, but the idea of like multiple different people can, or like manufacturers can bring their own twist. And that they realized that didn't work.
No, because what that meant was like everyone just installing their own bloatware on all the phones.
Yeah.
And it was garbage. Like no battery life. Processor speed was cool hardware specs, but it couldn't be used properly because the software would just eat it up.
Yep.
So we're in a lot better spot now.
We are
with
a
like
lot
Pixel
better spot,
and a lot more control over Android.
Yes. So I think that
we're ready to bring that back.
We are
Come
ready
on,
to
Google.
bring it back.
Bring back the glass. Let's go.
Google Glass, but like make it a full.
I want a contact lens.
That's the other. Yeah. Well, like let's not spoil all of our cool like talking points. So yeah, the Google Glass 2013. The next kind of big notable, at least for our purposes, notable leap was 2014. Sony announced Project Morpheus, which would become their PlayStation VR, which was released only 2 years ago in 2016.
Yep.
It's crazy. It used a combination of a headset and their PlayStation Move.
Yes, and the actual PS4 console.
Yeah, well, yeah, it runs off the console itself, which was a big, this is what people wanted. So 2016, as well as the PlayStation VR being released, it's also when Pokemon Go went live that summer.
Which was
summer 2016, which blew up and kind of changed.
Crazy.
Just basically completely changed people's, I think it was one of the, for both VR and AR, it was one of those big steps forward of like, this is the future of gaming. Like, and just completely changed the possibility of what a mobile game can be and what a video game can be. Like, quite frankly, that was the best exercise I probably got since my marriage, was going out and playing Pokemon Go. Because it was like motivating to actually get up and move and walk and run and like do stuff. And like, because like you like had to go out to find the Pokemon, but then also you get these eggs, and the eggs would only hatch if you walked X amount of steps. So it'd be like, let's walk the dog a couple of extra times today so that I can get my steps in, so that I can get my eggs.
Side note, ridiculously frustrating for runners because it doesn't work. I ran 6 miles like one day 2 weeks ago, and I was like, I'm going to hatch this 10K.
See, if they fix that, that'd be huge.
And I no distance increased at all. And I had the phone in my hand. Like, it was a nightmare. I was like, this needs to work, and it doesn't. So fix your stuff.
Fix your stuff. Okay, cool. And then the last most kind of notable development that I want to talk about is the Nintendo Labo of 2018, which kind of combines both AR and VR.
A little bit.
Because you're using, so basically the way it works, we talked about this before, it's all these like cardboard pieces that you can kind of fold into different shapes for different things. So things like you can make a little car, or you can make a fishing pole, or like it can get as like sophisticated as this entire like robot setup where you're
wearing a backpack and
you're wearing and so it has a couple different applications. The AR portion of it is like, well, it's the physical cardboard, and then it interacts with your Switch in such a way where you can like, the Switch can be on the ground, and you can have the fishing pole, the Labo in the shape of a fishing pole, and like actually go quote unquote fishing, and that's like augmented reality. The virtual reality is like they even have like a headset for like the robot one, and you can put it over your face, and then you have the robot gear, and that
you slide the Switch into the slot, and you wear it on your head.
Yeah, it's crazy. So it's like a weird, crazy combination of both AR and VR, and it's really, I think it's how well it sells towards like kids. It's primarily marketed towards children, but I think if it does well, we could see some crazy applications with that same idea. And
gosh,
AAA.
There's families in our church that
gaming
would eat that up. The right age.
Yeah,
my son's too young. He's 3, so he would just rip it apart, sit on it, like, and you throw it around. It wouldn't work at all, but. Yeah. No,
give him 2 years, and
I can't wait.
And you get him a Labo. But but even more, like as an adult, I'm like, wow, I want to be able to put my Joy-Cons in a some kind of device that basically makes it a shotgun and then play Doom. You know what I mean? Like play Doom on my Switch. Like that'd be awesome. And I think that they've been trying to do that kind of AR thing, games period, way back to like Duck Hunt. I think of like the old Duck Hunt gun. Mm-hmm. Like it's the same idea. You've got one right there. You've got a little gun and you're using it as a sort of AR control. I mean, that's what motion controllers are too. Is they're essentially augmented reality. You're doing a real motion to have
that's translated into the game.
That's translated into a virtual result. And
Wii tennis.
So I think that like the more sophisticated that kind of thing gets, it also has to be affordable. I don't want it to go buy an accessory every time a new game comes out. That's stupid.
And the Labo is like $80 to start, and then expansions are more.
Yeah, exactly. So like I think it, as it becomes more affordable, what would be cool is if you could make the technology in such a way where you can create your own, like program and create your own.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of the history that's kind of then and now. We've come a long way in the past 100 years in regards to simulating reality. But let's talk about now. Let's talk about the here and now. What are some developments in VR that are changing the industry and by extension changing the world? Like what are some ways in which like developments in VR are moving forward and moving us forward?
I'm going to give you my perspective because I follow the industry pretty closely.
Okay.
And so 2016 was the release of PlayStation VR, and that was the first accessible VR package that you could get. And the most accessible is usually the lowest price and requires the least amount of hardware. So the PlayStation 4 had already been out for 3 years, and the install base was like 40 million at the time or something like that. And so PSVR was something super simple. Just go accept the price, which was $300. But it was one thing you could buy and bring home, and you're in. That's it. Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive, its competitors, still required that like 4-digit expensive computer. So it's over $1,000 with a crazy gaming rig. Then you had to go buy the headset and the controllers. In addition, it was like $600 and $800. Insane cost. Tons of knowledge, know-how, and setup, and drivers, and all the complications that come with PC gaming. And so I think 2016 was kind of a mark, how has it changed the industry? Well, now VR is accessible to the masses.
Yep.
Which was just announced today that PlayStation hit 82 million sold. That's the install base of PS4s.
Mm-hmm.
And so if VR, it's dropping in price. I think you can get it at $250 now.
Do you have to get the VR? Do you have to use the VR with the Pro? Or
nope.
You can do it
with both,
on the regular?
The Pro, of course, has better frame rates.
Yeah.
And it's slightly better, but you don't need one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's PC versus console. We had a whole discussion about this. We won't get super into it, but I think that people who enjoy the PC using the Oculus and the HTC Vive,
that is the premier experience.
I was gonna say their argument is that like the experience is just so much better.
But that's not going to change the industry. That's those special like enthusiasts who actually care are going to go do it and have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
So how the industry is changing. VR is still hanging on, but I'm going to actually argue that it didn't have that much of a change yet.
Yeah.
It's at its infancy. It's only a year and a half to 2 years old, and no one's really changing anything. I mean, we're still getting these amazing AAA, like, single-player experience games, God of War, Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, like, all the stuff Sony's coming out with. Nintendo has no regard to VR at all, except for Nintendo Labo, which is kind of a side project that's not really VR, but kind of is.
There. Yeah,
and so, like, you don't see any of the major publishers coming out with VR stuff. We're only getting those little experiences added to their games. Yeah. So, like, there might be a Call of Duty VR coming or a Battlefield VR, but it's just going to be like a little aside deal, like a little game.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that we are also seeing a lot more like people, because of the Oculus and the success of the Oculus, because of the success of Pokemon Go, because of the success of the PlayStation VR. I think that what we're seeing is, and just because of like the games, like Skyrim is now VR, and I've heard the best Skyrim experience is on VR. I've had friends who hate Skyrim who got on VR and they're like, I love this game now.
Yeah.
So I've heard that like the best way to play Skyrim is VR now. And so now we're seeing good games. We're seeing good experiences. We're seeing people who are like, I'm having fun immersing myself into a virtual world. And I think that what we saw in some of our research for previous episodes is we're seeing that they're dumping tons of money into VR projects. So you're right. Nothing's really changing right now, but I think think it's because we're in that stage. We're in that like they're in that storming stage of just like we are researching like the
it's like the foundation building.
Yeah,
you don't really have a house yet, but you got a hole dug.
Yeah,
and you got cement down there.
Yeah, so
that
like the shape of it, it's like you can kind of see the at least topographical shape of things and where things are going to go. And
the PSVR release was the biggest step forward in VR, in my opinion, just because it hits so many people, and that's how you make a movement. It's like hitting the masses.
Sure. I can see that argument. I would
just
say
from a marketing
perfection
like,
of the technology what I would argue is the Oculus Rift.
Sure,
really, and you know, without a way to go forward, doesn't matter if it hits the masses or not. You know, so and they built a lot off of the Oculus Rift with the PSVR, but nevertheless, that's all just
like 3D didn't take off because no one wanted it.
The other thing is like we had to get to a point where like we could render. Things at 60 frames per second. So we talked about this before in our frames per second episode that like VR does not work at 30 frames per second. Like,
right. It makes people sick.
Makes people sick. Yeah. So 60 frames per second, we have to like that's going to be the new standard going forward with if VR takes off in the way that we hope it does. So.
And in the future, I believe the next generation consoles. And I think the Oculus Rift and HTC Vive are going to come down in price, but the next gen consoles are going to have much more accessible VR.
Yeah.
And because the new hardware, we're just going to advance that farther.
Yep. Okay, so moving away from now and moving towards the future, why are we so excited about this? What are the possibilities of this technology that get us so pumped? Like, what's the future of VR? Why do we think, or at least the possible future of VR? Because you and I have changed our minds. I think when we started this podcast, at least when I started this podcast, I was like, VR is still just kind of a gimmick. I still thought of VR as kind of a gimmick. And since then, I've played it.
Yeah,
and since then, I've talked about in reading Ready Player One and talking about it and just kind of like that's sort of a very realistic depiction of our current state of VR and just kind of excited about the possibilities. So what are the possibilities? Like why are we so excited about this technology?
I'm actually the most excited about non-gaming ideas.
Applications,
Yeah, like I want to be able to like buy an electronic ticket to the Super Bowl and sit in the stadium watching a live Super Bowl game where you're in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
So like the offensive lineup is right in front of you and you can see all the players breathing and like looking at each other and making their call signs. Or like when NASA decides to send more stuff to Mars, like you can go with NASA on a Mars exploration.
Yeah,
you can control the camera with your head, like looking around to see like where this rover is. Like cool stuff like that. Sitting in a movie theater to watch the newest movies because digital is kind of the future, right? We've seen that with music and we see it with movies as far as owning them at home. But as theaters die, which they are, like the movie industry in the theaters is not increasing. I mean, you hear all these records being set, but you look at it, it's declining. The demand for going to the theater is going down. And like having a VR experience where you can still go to the movies with your friends, you can look with your headset from your couch to your left and see your buddy.
Yeah.
And you look ahead and you're watching a movie in full like surround sound 4K quality, like over the internet. That's crazy to me. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, like, and we've talked before in the podcast about like chat rooms completely changes the way that like completely changes the way that we interact with the internet, like the internet itself. So, you know, we have this whole, massive online community. We have everybody's interconnected. Everybody's involved in some way, shape, or form with the internet. The internet is like our collective hive consciousness at this point. But the only way we have to interact with it right now and interact with people on it is through these little tiny screens. That we touch or we type onto, you know what I mean? Like we just input. It's all this just sort of two-dimensional field of vision that we all have sort of just kind of... There's a picture I saw online of someone was like, when you're poor, and it has like a picture of this really good meal, but like on their phone, but they're just like eating rice. They're just like looking at the picture, wishing they were eating eating the good food. That's kind of what I think of as like, that's what we're all just kind of experiencing it through this, this thing that we just sort of have been doing for the last 20 years that we've had the internet, and that's just looking at a two-dimensional screen, being able to like have our entire selves immersed in the internet, essentially, like that information. You can go like Wikipedia then becomes a library that you can scroll through and pull out a book. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now I'm thinking of Iron Man, which kind of set the whole like
or you
manufacturing AutoCAD,
or like the chat rooms in Ready Player One, where it's this
you go hang out.
It's like you're hanging out in essentially a basement, but you're sitting in the comfort of your home. You don't have to. You just kind of log in and
Ready Player One really does kind of show off.
Yeah, but I think of all the applications. I mean, too, we talked about the other applications of like think it completely changes the way that like governments can be run. Like assassination is something that like can be a thing of the past because you can just like Congress can be held, everyone can be in their own safe houses, don't have to transport, don't have to go anywhere. You can have peace summits and just log into a chat room essentially, and they're all there, and they can make it as fancy and stuff as you want.
Like Star Wars and Coruscant, exactly. They just like have a hologram of Yoda,
hologram
like somewhere else,
but it's not a hologram. Everyone's just sort of jacked into a chat room essentially, and they're all just sort of interacting with one another. Like that kind of thing can happen now.
Imagine remote surgery, doctors from other countries that have crazy experience in one specific thing. Like this doctor will replace your ear, and you will go from deaf to hearing, but one guy knows how to do it.
Yeah.
Well, he can now help you. Yeah. And you don't have to leave. Yeah. You can be at home.
So as excited as I am about the non-gaming applications, I'm also just excited about the gaming applications. Yes. Like I'm excited about like just what video game. I mean, oh my gosh. Think of if World of Warcraft was a world you could go to.
Yeah, and then there's your Sword Art Online or your .hat sign. Yep. Like you're just log into an entire game,
an entire world that you can explore. Like escapism. I mean, there are dangers to it as much as there are. I think there is a lot of. I mean, the psychology of video games is already gaming disorder is a thing we talk about in an episode where we have the dark side of gaming, and we talk to length about that. So like. Imagine, again, part of the reason why that's motivated by escapism, and like escapism, it could be a huge problem, but like. It's still so cool, like just being able to play games, like by being there and being you are the controller, you are the game, like that's crazy.
To give a shout out to Jim. Thank you for letting me play your PSVR and your PS4 Pro. But we played Wipeout, which is one of the racing games you can get. There's a collection, like the Omega collection. It has a couple of old versions of Wipeout and a new one. And the first thing I did when I logged in, it was the very first game I had ever experienced in VR. And I'm sitting at the cockpit, and the countdown's happening. Like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And the cockpit's completely open, like a sunroof in the sides. I just sat and looked around, like as far up and to my right, and as far up to my left and around. And like the race had started. I was complete garbage at the game because I was just looking around. Like, I looked down at the controls. They matched what I was doing on the controller. And I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. It just blew my mind.
Yeah, and like, I just think about, again, this is sort of a half gaming, half not, but think about like, you could learn completely new skills, like by playing a game, which you can't really do right now. If I'm doing a bar fight in Uncharted, I'm just pressing buttons,
right? But quick like time events and analog sticks,
but bar fight in PlayStation VR, like bar fight in Uncharted VR, like you'd have to you'd learn how to block, how to like maneuver things, and yes, you wouldn't have quite the strength training that at least not right now. You wouldn't have like the strength ability to do like the actual strength training and physical conditioning that real martial arts would do, but you'd at least be able to learn the techniques, like the concepts behind the techniques.
You can do muscle memory,
and all that stuff. You can learn how to drive. Like, oh my gosh, think about the driving industry.
Simulators.
Think about, or even just driving simulators, like students, like the amount of like student crashes. And wrecks that will go down reduced because you'll be able to learn in a virtual and be able to make stupid mistakes in a virtual. And it'll grade you based on it, and you won't be able to drive until you can get a certain score. Like that's completely change all of that. Like the games will now become like a part of life in learning skills, and that's pretty cool.
That's what Ready Player One was all about. Yeah, like, you go to school in VR.
Yeah,
classrooms.
They have a class about the pyramids of Giza. You can go to the pyramids of Giza, and they'll show you all the things.
Take a tour and walk all around. Yeah, and then like online classes would completely change because now you'd be in that classroom with your classmates. You'd be able to see them. And
school shootings become a thing of the past because
you can be home
meeting. Everyone meets in their home. Yep. It's crazy. So cool. That's why we're excited about it. I will say, there's kind of two ways that I conceive of where the technology is headed. I've already kind of hit on this. There are the sort of sensory simulators, which is your Ready Player One form of VR, and it's what we've got now, which is just like it's just an illusion that's tricking your brain into thinking that you're in a virtual world. And that's what the technology is. Is just a headset. It's haptic parts for feel. It's like for your five senses.
There's a dark side too. We're not going to talk about that.
No,
this is a family-friendly part. This is a family-friendly podcast, but there's an entire dark about haptic feedback.
There are some
and sensory
family-friendly, or not family-unfriendly implications that I'm sure you can use your imagination for.
Here you go. You're on travel away from your family, and you want to be close to your wife. You would be able to use virtual reality in such a way that would allow you to be close to your wife and your family, but to get hugs from your kids.
But it's all just. Yeah, we could go. We'll have to have a whole different episode on the dark side of VR now.
I know.
No, or maybe not.
Yeah.
But yes, but all it is really it's just technology that's designed to sort of trick your senses into thinking that it's having an experience. So whether it's haptics, a headset,
external.
Yeah, exactly. They're all external things that are tricking your current body, your physical body into the other form of VR, which we're a little bit I don't think we're probably going to see it in our lifetime. is we've talked about brain machine interfaces, BMIs, and they are it's some kind of chip or some kind of machine that interfaces with your brain. So whether that's something that you wear externally or something that's surgically implanted into your body, or nanobot, like you can get as crazy sci-fi as you want with this. Like it could be nanobots that are just like, it's a bunch of nanobots that are all interfaced with one another and that like swarm through your bloodstream, blood vessels of your vein. Like there's so many possibilities of what this technology could look like. But one way or another, it's some kind of interface that interfaces with your brain, with your consciousness. Internally, that allows you to have experiences. There's so many applications to this. Way more applications than just VR, but one of those applications is it would allow you to have virtual experiences, because it would literally just take your consciousness, all of your senses, and poop, transfer them into a virtual world.
Have you ever played Metal Gear Solid 4?
No.
A guy took control of an entire army through nanomachines, and then whenever they got shot, the nanomachines were programmed to stimulate your brain to produce dopamine, so you would just feel good, and you would keep going.
Yeah.
And it was like this whole thing where he was controlling an entire army of men.
To have them die?
I mean, basically just send them out, and like they're never going to stop. So they're kind of super soldiers. They're augmented. They're also genetically like manipulated too. Sure. So they're super soldiers.
Well, yeah, and every time in pop culture,
insane. I'm like, wow.
Because of storytelling, you have to have a conflict, so there's always some downside to these technologies.
Yeah, of course.
The realistic upside of all these technologies would probably far outweigh the dystopian possibilities. And so even though, like, again, both Sword Art Online and The Matrix have these like there's some conflict that causes to put the heroes' lives at risks or whatever, like the reality of what those technologies could actually mean are actually way more exciting in my mind, at least. So like, you know, a BMI could allow us to have an MMO, a complete game experience, where you just, you lie in your bed, you close your eyes, and boom, you interface with the computer in your head,
crazy.
And then boom, you're in a game. So the next, few Breath of the Wild, like you're in Breath of the Wild, you are Link, like you literally are Link, and you are exploring Hyrule. Like that's something that's
you smell, you cook,
because it can do all of that. Like literally, you are in,
because it's taking your brain hostage.
Yeah. And just completely, and it doesn't have to necessarily even be your consciousness so much as like it can do the same thing as the sort of sensory manipulation, but it's just happening inside your brain as opposed to outside of your brain. Like you're not using your eyes, you're closing them, and then boom, you're in. Like it's this machine that's telling your brain all these things. Crazy.
It is.
So that's like I don't think we'll see that in our lifetime.
Probably not.
Maybe we'll see we'll probably see the proto version of that being more in regard to like helping people with disabilities, like machines basically that allow you to like see and stuff like that by transferring electrical. So I think we already have some very like rudimentary versions of that.
Yeah.
So we'll probably see that kind of thing more so than the actual like entertainment applications of it.
Right.
But still, like that's the kind of foundation of BMIs. Super exciting.
Like cyborg biometric augmentation.
Yeah.
I guess is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I was just told like this past Sunday by a friend of ours at church, Charlie, who said that he talked to someone who put a chip in their hand that had their contact information on it that used near-field communication, which all phones do. If you ever use Google Pay or Apple Pay, it's near-field communication, NFC.
Amiibos use that too, right?
Yeah. Who?
Amiibos?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Same technology. And so he had an NFC chip put into. He did it himself. Like clamped it into his hand.
Oof.
Yeah, painful, but it healed over. It was fine.
Sure.
And he would you want my email? My address, my phone number. Boop. He just hold your phone to my hand.
That's crazy.
And he did it, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, I've heard of things where like they can put they've been able to like put a chip in people's brains that allow them to control a mouse pointer with their mind.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy.
So
it's like the technology, they're working on it. Yep. Like they're working on that technology. Whether we'll have Sword Art Online in my lifetime or World of Warcraft VR in my lifetime, like probably not, but maybe our kids, maybe our grandkids, that kind of thing. So it's crazy. So those are the kind of like potentials. So let's bring it back a little bit. Like my last question, let's bring it back a little bit towards the present again.
Yeah.
So we've talked about
we've dreamt.
We've talked about this sci-fi utopia of VR. Let's talk about, bring it way back and let's just talk about like, okay, for us to have affordable, enjoyable VR, what are our biggest barriers right now? What's preventing us? Like, what are the big hurdles that developers have to overcome till we have like the VR that we want, at least. The Ready Player One VR.
On the
experience.
developer side, it's still new. So programming a game with game design mentality around VR is still very new in our industry.
Yeah, everything becomes first person.
Right.
Like, everything becomes FPS.
And everything becomes like the player can look around everywhere in a different way that's limited not by the controller, because you can look anywhere, literally.
Yeah.
And so like just having that mentality from a game design perspective, that's on paper before you even type the first line of code. That's on the that's foundational.
Yeah.
So that's a barrier of entry. Just it's new.
Yep.
So we'll get there.
And I can't imagine. I mean, like I said, I kind of tongue in cheek said that everything has to become first person shooter. It doesn't really, but like I can't really imagine how VR would work without it. You know
there's
what
a
I mean?
game that's for PSVR called Moss.
Yeah.
And it stars a mouse, and it's like looking into a diorama, and you are a mythical being looking down on the mouse.
Yeah.
And you are like controlling what the mouse is doing in the environment. It's completely third person.
Okay, well, it makes me think of like it's either so the two possibilities.
It's really good, actually.
The two possibilities of like, I know it's a little bit different from this, but you know, kind of conceptualizing, it's like games either become quote unquote RTSs where you're top down directing something, a piece like a chess piece, or they become first person shooters. But like, I can't imagine the same kind of ideas like well, even like Breath of the Wild, like a third person, like controlling a third person character. Maybe you could like marionette them around, but I don't see why that would be any better than just being them, you know, especially if they get the movement and everything right.
Yeah, in that regard, it'd just be like a current game ported to VR.
Sure, yeah.
Like, okay.
Well, that's what I mean. It's just like in game design, designing a game, like does the third person behind the shoulder or behind the back, does that whole genre go completely away?
I don't think so. It depends on how things shake out.
Yeah.
Because like if VR replaces TVs, which could happen if it's that accessible to your whole family to like not need a TV anymore, just a VR.
Yeah.
Then maybe you still want to create God of War or Breath of the Wild or Horizon Zero Dawn, and have that third person perspective. It's just it's in a 3D world,
right? Because I guess the implications of like from at least a narrative standpoint, there's value in having a character that is separated from you,
right? Like watching a movie.
Yeah, so that way you can have a
fully identified,
Kratos
fleshed out person
is a different person than me, as opposed to if I'm in the head of a character, then they're me. But maybe that changes. Maybe that game design moves more towards open world experiences as opposed to linear storytelling experiences. So who knows? I did think of a possibility. You know, I was thinking about this kind of while thinking about this episode. It's kind of another application of VR. Like think about like you were saying, like it could replace TVs. It could also replace consoles as we know it. Because you could still like if you have the right haptic feedback, like put your VR goggles on, you could. Then in that virtual environment or virtual space, you could then have a controller. Yeah. And then you can through the haptic feedback, you would know where you're. Then
you don't even have to have you don't have to manufacture a plastic controller. The controller can look different for every game. It's like this controller was made for this game.
This is the
no more gimmicks, no more touchpads. No more motion controls.
And then the screen is just there in front of you.
Right,
and
it's just you.
It's just, or even just there. Like you can still be, so you don't even have to like move around. It's just like, okay, cool. Like the screen is now the screen, and you can like, it kind of like a translucent, you can kind of see the controller if you have to look at it. But then you just hold it at your weight, have your hands at waist level with your haptic gloves on, and boom, that's your controller as long as you memorize it. Like, that's crazy. Like that's thinking about that. It's nuts. Yeah, I would say the biggest barriers right now, price, obviously. Like the tech needs to come down. I would even make the argument that next gen consoles not only need to be VR capable out of the box, but I would argue they should have VR, at least a bundle where you can get VR for the equipment for fairly cheap.
Right out of the box.
Out of the box, day one. Like
Microsoft did that with the Kinect. Didn't go over very well.
Well, that's what I'm saying is like, but I think we're getting to a point where it could work. Now, it just depends.
I like the option. If you want the VR bundle with your PS5, you don't have to buy the PS5 with VR, but it's going to have PSVR 2.
That's what I'm saying. It shouldn't be more expensive. It should just be like, all right, this console is for $300 or $350, whatever. Brand new console, PS5. It's like, and it comes with a VR headset.
Oh, that'd be nuts.
So that like, okay, you can play game, and then certain games. I'm sure there are going to be certain games that are VR games and certain games that are not. But like, your multiplayer experiences should be not VR, so that you can sit in the same room with someone and play it. The single player experiences probably could stand to be VR and then again, like most VR now, it's like it's mirror. You can see what the other person's seeing on the screen anyway. So if someone wants to come sit and watch you play God of War VR, like they can.
Right.
Still.
You'll have a headset on.
Because you'll have a headset on, but they'll still be able to see what's happening on the screen
Yeah.
if you choose to set it up that way.
Yeah, at that point, your VR headset is just a fancy
but like,
monitor.
I would be interested to see the stats of like how many people just play games by themselves to themselves. Even if they're playing a multiplayer game, they're still just playing it in this room by themselves. Like how many people like watch people play video games?
Right.
How many people still couch co-op? Like legit video gaming has sort of become just sort of this thing you do on your own, even if you're interface. But like again, that just VR then just sort of fuels that idea of like interfacing with other people through it. Like if the only people you're ever interacting with when you're playing games are online, then why not do it in a virtual space?
Right.
So yeah. So that would be, I would say it's probably not going to happen with the next gen.
Yeah, it would be like 2 or 3 generations out.
Yeah, maybe 2 generations out. I would want it. I would be stoked if they did that for the next gen. That's probably not going to happen. It's one of those like I hope they do it, but I don't think they will.
I speculate there will be a PSVR 2 and it will cost money, but it won't. I'm with you that it won't happen as far as a bundle day one or have to be, or it won't be cheap.
Yeah,
yet.
Yeah.
You mentioned ease of use as another barrier of entry, like having these controllers or like without an omnidirectional treadmill or right now we actually have like wires are an issue.
Yes.
So being able to like
wireless is a big one.
Yeah. Have a console powerful enough to render the images wirelessly through some sort of proprietary wireless communication that's not Wi-Fi.
With decent battery life that you can charge while you sleep.
Crazy good battery life. Like those kinds of things need to be advanced.
Yeah, absolutely.
Haptic
is the next. Yeah. Haptic is the next frontier. I would say haptic and wireless are the next frontier for VR. Like,
and not having to clear your entire living room to play.
Right. And we don't need crazy haptic suits quite yet.
Right.
Like I would be happy with haptic gloves that just track my finger movements, and that's my controller.
Yeah,
because then from there, if you can do all the movements that the fingers and hands can, wrists probably as well, maybe arms. So even if it was like a haptic gauntlet that went like halfway up my arm just to get that arm movement, like if you can get that, if you can capture that, then every and any controller and any hand possibility, like. We could do away with controllers and everything could be motion controlled, and if it can track me grabbing a bottle out of the air and throwing at someone, great. Or, like I said, you can render a controller within the virtual environment.
Right, you just pick it up and use it.
Exactly. So all that's possible with haptic technology. So I'd say that's the big next big frontier. But yeah, wireless is huge.
Yeah.
Also the bulkiness. They need to get smaller. They need to get more streamlined. Like in a perfect world, in my mind, it's contact lenses. You just pop in your eyes, boom, and that's your VR. Like that would be amazing for at least the visual. But even something as lightweight and simple as my glasses would be awesome. A huge because right now it's just like they're big, they're bulky, they're sweaty. Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
and like
sweat.
Even the Ready Player One, like even the bulkiness of the Ready Player One, is too much in my mind. I'm like, they need to be smaller. They need to be like what smartphones are now. Like think about the size of your smartphone in your pocket. Yeah, exactly.
Think of a Palm Pilot. It's like bricks, or even the original laptops. They were like massive. Brick, blocks.
Yeah, and how fast we went from that to what we have now to the
razor thin smartphones.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I'd say those are big barriers. Those are the next big barriers. Is that they need to be affordable, and then they need to be easy to use and not take you out of the experience.
Right.
So cool.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other closing thoughts?
My little story with Doom VR, I have to share. It's so funny. No one else in the room, at least that had played it, did what I did. So you walk into a room and there's a little Doom guy doll. Like in Doom, you collect them.
Yeah.
And the first thing I did was look at him and walk over to him with the controller and pick it up. But it was like press R2, and then there was a throw button that I didn't know. I was trying to figure out what to do with him, so I accidentally threw him into the ground. And I instinctively walked over and then squatted in real life, like actually knelt down, and the camera tracked it.
Nice.
And you could go down and grab him again. And then later on in the same experience, there was a vent that an enemy had escaped through as like a scare kind of thing. And you could actually physically kneel down and look into that vent and get a different angle to see it kind of around the corner. So I just thought that was like mind-blowing. I don't know why, because you play Doom VR with a controller, with joysticks. And so you're still kind of limited by that. But it did it tracked my vertical movement, not just my head looking down, but me actually squatting and changing the plane at which I'm looking through. It was awesome.
That's awesome.
So that was really cool.
Cool.
I love PSVR.
Yeah.
I wish I had more money so I could buy one and a Pro and play. And I wish there was more games that would make it worth it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Well, that's our big VR episode. I know we covered a lot of ground that we've covered before, but
could you imagine virtual amusement parks, virtual roller coasters with haptic feedback? If they could capture
that's what I want to talk about. So in Cedar Point Park, my mom kept calling it Cedar Park, and then got all of us stuck on call it. I don't know why, but she said it so much that we all started saying it. And now I'm like, yeah, like I found myself saying it and then correcting myself like I just did. At Cedar Point, they have a roller coaster called the Iron Dragon. And I saw it wasn't a great roller coaster. We rode it and it wasn't great, but they had a thing. It was like at 7 o'clock or at 6 o'clock, this ride closes down. At 7 o'clock, this ride reopens up with a VR.
What?
So it was like it was a VR roller coaster, but like it was instead of like a VR roller coaster where you're sitting on your chair or whatever, and
it was a roller coaster.
It was a roller coaster with like a VR headset that like I'm guessing that like dragons and stuff like flew at you. And
both ways that you could do that. Yeah. A roller coaster from your couch where you're not physically moving, but your body is tricked into thinking it is. That's one way.
With that though,
did you do it?
I would say that no, I didn't do it because we didn't have time. And it was we had other things we wanted to do more. Yeah. And there was like a line for it. I think that was the big thing. It was like we looked at there was like an app. So I wanted to do it because I knew we were going to be doing an episode about it, and so I wanted to talk about it, but I didn't. So because I wanted to see what it was like. But the actual ride itself was so unremarkable that I was also like, if it was like a crazy roller coaster and they were like, and VR, I would have definitely done it. But because the roller coaster was like, meh, I was like, I don't know how much the VR is going to actually enhance this experience.
Yeah.
But my other experience with something like that is the, there was a ride at Busch Gardens, I want to say, that was like, you sit in a chair and then you put these like 3D goggles on and then you watch. It's more like a movie theater, but like it's that same idea where like the 3D makes you feel like you're there, but like you're on this thing that, and that made me sick as heck.
Really?
So I can imagine like the actual, like there's something different between like actually moving through like on a roller coaster, where like it's just a machine that's just throwing you across space. There's something different to me than like the simulation of just a chair sitting there and just like shaking you around, which I can only imagine is what like that experience you're talking about, where you're like in your home at your home and like.
Well, I mean, Wipeout was kind of like a roller coaster. There's a big giant drop, and you kind of get that gut like sensation, but that's it. And that actually makes people motion sickness. Yeah, or motion sick if you struggle with that, which I don't. So like I was able to enjoy it, and that's fine. But some people do get motion sickness from that. It's like that stomach lurching in your but you're not actually falling. Looks like it, feels like it.
I saw a thing on Reddit where like it was
I feel bad for those folks.
There was some kind of like virtual VR experience where they like have you on like on a building and you're like standing out on a beam trying to reach something. But the whole environment around you is rendered in such a way where it looks like you're on like a really tall skyscraper.
Yeah.
And like in this little thing, it's a gift. Like you see it third person. So I don't know how they quite did it. So you see it third person, but you can see the girl has like a headset on, and you can see what like she's experiencing.
Yeah.
But like you can also see this guy comes in and pushes her, and like the game renders in such a way where like it starts scrolling down like it's falling, and she's like but then you also see her like fall flat on the floor.
What?
Like, and just like. It's like that's what I'm talking about. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so like because it looks in your field of vision, it looks like you're falling, but you're actually just like lying on the floor. Yeah,
sensory trickery, man. Yeah, for real.
It's crazy. Like how much vomitous experience, so much vomit. I can imagine from something like that. Okay, cool. So, any other closing thoughts before?
Nope,
great, awesome, yeah, fun episode.
It was.
Yeah. So let's hear your thoughts. You know, we talked before about where you can share your thoughts with us after DLC. But if this VR episode inspired you, if you had any if you wanted to piggyback off of any thoughts that we brought or talked about, then you can find us at pretty much all social media platforms, all the main ones, at 80-Bit Podsmash. All one word, no hyphens, no funny business, just 80BitPodsmash.com and stuff. Got away from me there. So you can find us on social media platforms. If we're not on a social media platform of your preference, then
let us know.
We'll
be there.
We'll figure it out. We'll make it happen. So share us. Yeah, share on all and the above platforms.
Yep.
80-Bit Podsmash. We like them. If you like them. If you didn't like it, then like
let us know.
Skating message.
Yes.
And how we can improve. So, yes. Especially the skating message part. I really want to hear. Just trash us. Throw trash us, please. Fragile. But y'all have a great rest of your weeks.
Till next week.
Bye.
Bye.